It is a story that has been told many times before, and a story that will be told many more times in the years to come. A story of discovery, a story of interest, a story of study, a story of obsession. A discovery that would shroud the oceans in a miasma of shadow and madness. An interest so strong one would ignore the warnings uttered by all those around them. A study into forces beyond rational thought and control. An obsession that would lead a man to losing the one thing he holds dear in this world, and lead him to reclaim it once again. Dredge is an eldritch horror game disguised as a fishing game developed by Black Salt Games and released in 2023. The company was founded by 3 developers and a manager with a passion for creating games, and Dredge was the very first title they released as a show of what kind of games they were wanting to develop. It proved to be a strong debut, with the game winning numerous awards in its home country of New Zealand. It's a game that won me over through the painterly aesthetics and cozy gameplay focused on exploration, fishing, and avoiding malicious threats that will hunt you down all throughout the dark waters of the ocean. A big part of the game's atmosphere plays off of a person's thalassophobia, or a fear of the deep ocean. While the majority of the game will take place within each of the 5 different and visually distinct zones, each with unique threats, it is all too easy to find yourself traveling through the open ocean at night, questioning just how far down the waters go, and what secrets lie beneath the waves. Beneath the thin exterior of a relaxing fishing game, and beneath the nightmares and unspeakable horrors, it is a game about grief, madness, and obsession. The kind of obsession that consumes people, leading to disastrous consequences for themselves and the people around them, and holding up a mirror to these wayward souls to ask the question of who the real monsters are. It is a game that I had only played earlier this year in 2025 and fell so hard for the game that I would go on to earn the game's platinum achievement before purchasing the 2 pieces of DLC and completing them as well. It is a game that I would like to share with all of you, whether you have gone through the story for yourself or have never heard of the game before. To those of you whose curiosities have been piqued, wishing to uncover the veiled secrets beneath the tides, then I would like each of you to join me as we explore the story of Dredge, where one man's quest to reclaim what was lost has some rather mutagenic consequences. When we begin, we're on a boat driving through the seas as the sun begins to set. We've come to answer an ad for a job as the new fisherman for a town, but the surrounding waters are blanketed in a thick fog, and without a light to guide the way, waking up, we find ourselves in the sleepy fishing town of Greater Marrow, with the mayor ordering some men around as they move things onto a nearby boat. He'll welcome us to the town, thankful they didn't lose their new fishermen to the sharp rocks around the island, before inquiring as to whether or not we saw the lighthouse pointing right at us. Regardless, the mayor had a bunch of men loading their belongings into a spare boat they had, as ours was hopelessly beyond repair. To help us get our bearings again, he suggests that we should go out and try to catch some fish, but warns that we should head back to town before nightfall, when the fog rolls in. We can now disembark from the dock and interact with the game's simple tutorial, teaching us how to move the boat and turn the camera before we start learning the game's primary game loop. While fishing in many other games is a rather boring process of waiting for a fish to get hooked, Dredge puts a bit more thought into how the player catches fish to keep them engaged. Approaching a fishing spot, we can press the button to begin fishing, which will start the process of reeling in. As seen with the fishing hook on the left, we'll catch a fish if we just wait around long enough, but we can reel it in quicker by timing button presses to the wheel right next to the line. Pressing it when the line is within the green area means that the line will be hauled in faster, while missing it will set it back. To keep the mechanic engaging even later into the game, there are different variations of the wheel, such as the line bouncing back and forth on a curve, which can jump between multiple curves, waiting for bubbles to reach the top of a circle, or timing our reeling to when circles overlap with each other. The primary reason we may want to reel our fish in quicker is how time is handled in the game. Time will only progress when we are performing actions such as driving our boat or attempting to fish, while it remains still if we sit around or are docked somewhere. If we take too long, we may end up caught out at night when the monsters lurking around the Marrows reveal themselves. Lastly, we will also need to be careful about overfishing a spot. Each school will have levels of fish ranging from high to low, with schools naturally replenishing their numbers over the course of a few days. If we overfish a spot, however, to the point of depleting it, it will take an extra few days before the fishing spot is replenished. Returning to Greater Marrow, the mayor will talk to us a bit more about our boat. Seeing as they can't just gift us this boat and our old one is too damaged, he comes up with a bit of a compromise. A portion of our profits from selling fish will go towards a fund to buy the boat from the town. The mayor will also take us around the town to introduce us to some of the people we will be speaking with regularly. The first person he takes us to is the fishmonger, who will buy any fish we bring in. The price he offers, though, will depend on a few factors. While each type of fish will have different prices being offered, the best prices will be for fresh fish. If left to sit in our boat for too long, fish will turn stale before rotting. Once nothing is left but a clump of rot, the fishmonger will no longer buy it off of us. The other person we're taken to meet is the shipwright for repairs and upgrades. Should we take any damage out on the water, such as hitting rocks, it will block off sections of our inventory, which the shipwright can repair for a fee. Additionally, we can purchase better light bulbs, faster engines, and a variety of fishing equipment. Installing new equipment will take time progressing the day, although we can always choose to sleep through the night if we're docked. As for fishing equipment, different types of fish will require different types of equipment. Our basic fishing rod will only catch coastal fish, but with a total of 8 different fishing types, such as shallow and oceanic, we will need to find a variety of rods to swap out as needed. We'll need to continue fishing in order to pay off our debts so we can head back out onto the water to get back to work. The town of Greater Marrow lies on a small collection of islands called the Marrows, which lies in the center of Dredge's map, and serves as a good place to learn how the game operates before venturing into the dangers of open waters. Should the player ever get lost, especially at night, the lighthouse is visible from wherever we are on the map, guiding us home. As we fish by the rocks on the northern side of the Marrows, we can come across a message in a bottle floating in the water, which we can pick up and read over.
August 20th, 1927. Morning of the second day of the honeymoon and our first day proper. Today we're sailing around the islands and inlets at the back of Greater Marrow. I love the rocks here. The layers and colors are so striking. Furthermore, the fishing is relatively poor in these shallows, so I know he'll keep his hands on the wheel instead of the rods. He renamed the boat last night Julie. He did a fancy renaming ceremony and everything. I think he took it more seriously than the wedding. Supposedly, it's very important to perform it correctly lest you want ill fortune to follow the vessel. He wanted to throw away everything with the old name on it, but I kept the keychain. Ocean's Riches was a good name. I think he has prepared a surprise picnic lunch. I can see the basket half hidden stuffed under a blanket at the front of the cabin. I love it when he tries to be romantic.
Our time is mostly spent fishing to pay off our debt, but when we return to Greater Marrow, the old lighthouse keeper confronts us, asking us what exactly it is we are here for. Regardless of our answer, she tells us that there is nothing for us here and to move on. Ominous, but otherwise unthreatening, and we have other business to attend to. The mayor will also want our attention again, asking for a favor. He has a package that needs to be delivered to the sister town of Little Marrow on the east side of the archipelago, and when he hands it over, it seems to be dripping, whatever the contents are leaking through. Heading over to Little Marrow, we can hand the box over to the dock worker, who will hand us a bit of money as a courier fee and a book to read in our spare time, then leave us to explore around the town. For the moment, the only places of interest here are a trader we can sell any useless trinkets to, and a painter that can change our boat's color and flag using materials we find. There are also a few other oddities we can find out in the waters surrounding the Marrows. Behind Greater Marrow are 2 obelisks, though each serves a different function. The one on the north side holds depictions of carp, and by bringing enough carp to fill the hollow space inside the stone slab, it will open up and give us a sinew spindle. The spindle is actually a fishing rod and is the best one we have available at this point in the game, due to its small size and its ability to catch both coastal and shallow fish. It also, strangely, has a bonus to catch aberrations, although what an aberration is, we haven't a clue yet. The other obelisk just to the south remains inert when we interact with it, requiring a special set of circumstances in order to reveal its secrets. During the night, the darkness and fog will cause us to start panicking, with the more we panic, the worse its effects become. We may start seeing eyes watching us in the darkness, see rocks appear in front of us that weren't there before, or feel as though we're being chased by some horrid monsters, but it will also allow us to interact with the obelisk. The vision it grants, however, isn't likely to calm us down. Instead, we see Greater Marrows set to the flame, the lighthouse crumbling away as its light is extinguished. This vision of a potential future has been placed here as a warning to us, as there are ancient and terrible things that lurk in the waters around the Marrows. Heading west, we can find a small collection of islands and a boat sitting in the middle. When we head up to it and knock on the door, a man will peek through the slot on the door, telling us he's refusing to go any further. Apparently, he was supposed to deliver a package to the dock worker at Little Marrow, but has grown too afraid of a leviathan lurking in the water surrounding the Marrows. We can offer to deliver the man's package for him, and when we do, he'll push a lumpy, leaking brown package through the door and flee from these waters. Delivering the package, the dock worker will thank us and walk away without giving us any sort of compensation. The fishmonger, however, does offer compensation if we can fulfill a few special requests for him. Each of these requests are meant to help teach us a bit more about fishing, with his first request for a gulf flounder and grey eel only possible if we get a better rod than the one we start out with, while the second request for 2 arrow squid and a black grouper showing us that there are some fish that only come out at night. By this point, it is more than likely we'll have paid off the loan on our boat, which the mayor will happily stroll over to tell us. With more fish being brought in, the town has begun to prosper all the more, and so he has allowed the shipwright to expand her services and reopen the dry dock, unlocking the last of the game's upgrade systems. In the dry dock, we can use various materials we find, such as wood, metal, and cloth, in order to specialize some of the tiles in our boat's inventory. The game limits how much equipment the player can use by locking each piece of equipment to only being installed onto the correct tile. At the dry dock, we can add more space for motors, lights, fishing rods, and convert some of our fishing equipment slots into space for trawl nets, as well as increasing the size of our boat overall. The higher quality equipment is locked behind research, which we can perform at any dock if we have enough research points. These are gained by completing favors, as well as just found in shipwrecks or dredged up from the depths. We can also unlock the fishmonger's third order, and this time we will need special equipment in order to catch what we need. He will hand over a free crab trap to us, although any others we will need to purchase for ourselves, and leave us to put them out wherever we like. Like the trawl nets, which will passively catch fish as we sail around, the crab traps will catch crabs over time. They will need to be checked and repaired every few days, but provide a bit of extra income for when we aren't focused on fishing. Once we have a common crab and a fiddler crab, we can carry on catching fish to sell to further upgrade our ship and... What the hell is that? There are all sorts of mutations and aberrations we can find within the waters around the map, and taking it back to the fishmonger, he will give it a brief inspection. After slicing it open, he will pull a finely patterned handkerchief from its stomach and give it to us, then take the aberrant fish, promising he'll pay extra for any others we bring him. Returning back to our ship, a man will be peering in at us through our window, expressing an interest in the handkerchief that the fishmonger gave us. But rather than buying it off of us here, he wishes to speak with us more at his home on Blackstone Isle. Blackstone Isle lies just to the south of the Marrows, passing the sharp rocks that threaten to sink our vessel, and here we can find another obelisk. The obelisks actually give us a cryptic view into the past, helping piece together how the game's story came to be. This one shows how the obelisks came to rest on the shores of the various islands as they burst forth from the earth, crackling with energy before falling silent and still. That is, until we approach them while paranoid and receive the visions that they hold. When we actually dock at Blackstone Isle, we can approach the manor resting nearby, where the same man as before will be resting in the doorway, carrying a strange tome. He introduces himself as a collector of valuable artifacts, and as luck would have it, the handkerchief points towards an old shipwreck the collector has been searching for. The ship carried numerous valuable artifacts before it sank, and should we be able to find the wreckage, the collector asks us if we would be able to retrieve the artifacts. To accomplish this, he takes a few hours to install dredging equipment onto the back of our boat, which will prove useful for more than just finding artifacts. There are many shipwrecks and pockets of floating debris we can find throughout the ocean, and dredging will serve as the primary way of gathering resources from them to upgrade our boat. Unlike fishing, which can be completed without interacting with the mechanics, dredging will require us to switch an arrow between two different tracks to avoid getting hit, as they will set back our progress. The artifacts that Collector is supposedly looking for are a ring, a necklace, a watch, a music box, and a key. But with no clear idea on where to go, we will need to ask the people around Greater and Little Marrow if they have seen any shipwrecks lately. Checking in with the fishmonger, he will express a curiosity in the aberrant fish we have been finding, asking what we think happens when someone eats them. It's possible they either get sick or go mad, but the fishmonger wants to know for sure, and so his final request is to bring him one. When we do so, he will begin to act rather odd, talking about a strange whispering that we are unable to hear, and once we have finished selling whatever other fish we have, he will close down his shop for the day. Any attempts to visit him again will be met with silence until the following day, when he opens up his shop again and seems to have no recollection of what happened. If we try checking in at Little Marrow, asking a man about any nearby shipwrecks, he will claim that he does know of one, but it is not likely the one that we are seeking. A few years ago, the man's son was lost at sea, and now all he can think about is how his son is still out there in the cold and dark waters. He notices our dredging equipment and asks if we might be able to bring back some of his belongings, if only to set his son's soul to rest. The shipwreck isn't too far away either, just behind Little Marrow, and so we make the short detour to find it. On the way, we can find another message in a bottle floating on the waves.
August 21st, 1927. We had a slight accident yesterday around the shallows at the back of Greater Marrow. A rock seemingly appeared out of nowhere and struck the front of the boat. It did not penetrate the hull, but it jostled us around and a few items fell overboard into the water. We did not see what they were, which is of some concern, but we believe all important articles are accounted for. He's been checking over some notes from the boat renaming ceremony. He's paranoid that he performed the steps incorrectly. I've never known him to be so superstitious.
Finding the wreck behind Little Marrow, we can dredge around until we find an engraved belt buckle, and when we return it to the grieving father, he will thank us profusely. If, however, we hand the belt buckle over to the trader for a bit of extra pocket change, the father will quickly try to rush over and buy it back before the metal is melted down and reused. Continuing to ask around in Greater Marrow, we can ask the lighthouse keeper about any shipwrecks, to which she will point us to check in the west. As it turns out, we've known the location of the shipwreck this entire time. When traveling around at night, a towering spire of light can be visible behind Greater Marrow, and if we manage to locate it, either finding the light at night or figuring it out during the day, we can find some floating debris along with a strange key. Making our way back to Blackstone Isle, the collector will take the key from us, but will grow agitated that there doesn't seem to be any lock that the key opens. Indeed, whatever it was supposed to open went down with the ship, and the ocean has scattered the remaining artifacts across the islands surrounding the Marrows. The next likely place to check would be the Gale Cliffs towards the southwest, although the collector still rewards us for giving him the key. Speaking a few words from his book, he grants us the dark ability of haste to help carry us along the waves. As the name implies, haste will overcharge our engines, granting us increased speed to allow us to either reach our destination sooner, or to make a quick getaway from hostile threats. Doing so, however, puts a lot of stress on the engines and heats them up, and if we are not careful, allowing them to overheat too much, both our engines and hull will take damage. Before we head towards the Gale Cliffs, however, there are a few things that are left for us to do here, including preparing our vessel for the journey south. To do so, we will need more scrap wood and metal, and a good place to find more is around the islands of Steel Point to the north. Before we head up there, though, we're stopped by a woman asking us what we think of Greater Marrow. She has grown rather tired of it and wishes to go live off on her own, and asks us to deliver some materials to a spot she picked out on the west side of the islands. After we leave a bit of wood and metal there, we can return to Greater Marrow and let her onto our boat to ferry her across the waters. If we leave for a while and come back, she'll thank us for our help, and now that she has built her house and settled in, we can use the dock nearby to access our private stash. The debris isn't the only thing of interest here, as tucked away on the rocks is a small camp with a message made of branches reading SOS. Approaching it, we find a castaway thankful to see a passing boat. Supposedly, a wave threw him overboard during a storm, and for the last 2 weeks he has been hoping his crew would come find him, but to no avail. We can let him onto our boat and ferry him back to Little Marrow, where the castaway hopes he can rejoin his crew when they next stop by, offering us his signet ring as a thanks for not leaving him on the rocks. Returning to Steel Point to finish collecting materials, we can also find the last obelisk that can be found around the Marrows, although the vision it grants remains as of yet unclear. Within, we see the fog that hovers over the waters at night originating from a boat as a lighthouse can be seen in the distance, as though the fog and the other terrible things we have encountered spawned from a single blasphemous act. If we head east of the Marrows, we can also come across one of the game's most hidden quest chains. Standing silently on one of the islands is a man dressed in ragged blue robes, requesting that we bring him a variety of fish. The blue mackerel can be found in the waters around Greater and Little Marrow, likely the first fish we ever caught, although the other two will take a bit more searching. If we head south towards the Gale Cliffs, we can start to find tiger mackerels that can be brought back to him, and lastly, heading north into volcanic waters, snake mackerels can be found. Each time we bring him a fish, the man will rip out its heart and eat it, sating his hunger. Once all 3 have been brought to him, he rewards us with a book that, upon finishing reading it, will decrease the prices at shops while increasing how much we earn when selling. Around the Marrows, we can see a number of other vessels sailing around in the night, honking their horns into the open air. Getting too close to one or honking back in response will get their attention, and when they approach, the boats reveal themselves to actually be anglerfish-like monstrosities, intent to devour our boat. Once we head into open waters, however, we will need to be much more careful. The fog hovering over the waves will increase our panic, bringing all sorts of monsters our way. These include vile tentacles that spring up to try and sink us, a fast shark that will attempt to ram into us, and a large ray that will relentlessly pursue us. Perhaps the most dangerous of all is the great Leviathan mentioned by the scared courier. Its body will breach through the waves, encircling us in an attempt to drown us. It leaves the player feeling on edge after it shows up, but it will also make an appearance should we try to leave the boundaries of the map, swallowing us whole. Luckily, we can easily reach the cluster of rocky islands just to the southeast known as the Gale Cliffs, and find the old decaying town of Ingfell. At one point, it was a rather profitable town that relied on the whaling ships that brought in valuable oil. That is, until the whales all seemed to disappear, leaving many without a source of income and forcing them to sail for other lands. Talking with one of the residents, she'll explain that a delicacy among the people of Ingfell is made from the rotting carcass of a conger eel found within the holes of the nearby cliffs. Typically, they would just bury the eel in the ground while waiting for it to decay, but the woman's dog has been burying them back up lately before they are ready. We can poke around the cliffs at night to find one of these eels, and after letting it rot on the deck of our ship for a while, we can bring it back to the resident for a small cash reward. If we require ship repairs or to sell any fish, we won't have to venture all the way back to Little Marrow, as just on the other side of the bay is actually a small pontoon with a traveling merchant aboard. With the exception of the Marrows, she will be available in each of the major areas of the game, serving as a fishmonger, repairman, and a space for upgrades all in one place. While she won't purchase any trinkets off of us, she will offer valuable resources for purchase, such as research parts or scraps of metal that are vital to increasing the size of our ship. As it turns out, Ingfell wasn't the only town to be built in the Gale Cliffs, as nestled just by the cliffs are some ruins that are partially sunken into the waters. It's from these ruins that the light emerges to signal the presence of another artifact, but when we approach, the light is actually behind a large pile of rocks. Docking at the ruins, we can find an old hermit as the only remaining resident. These ruins were once a sister town that stood here, where the hermit lived peacefully with his wife. However, that changed with the emergence of a monstrous serpent that attacked the town, sending many homes into the surrounding waters. Many fled to Ingfell, but when asked why the hermit did not join them, he confesses that it is because he is ashamed of what he did in the past. The hermit originally lived in Ingfell with his brother, but after the death of their parents, the two fought over their inheritance. When he and his wife decided to move to the other town, he stole the family crest from his brother. He knows he can't return to Ingfell without the crest, but when the serpent attacked, much of his belongings were dragged back into the creature's lair. He warns us that should we go inspect the waters around the cliffs, that we should keep an eye out for the monster. One of the bottles floating nearby seems to be an artifact manifest of items sold to one of the businesses run in the town before it too was destroyed.
Vessel, SY Grand Prize. Owner, Mr. Michael Schulte. Port, Gale Cliffs. Oaken music box. Purchased from the antiquarian at the Little Marrow for a bargain price. Previously salvaged from an undisclosed shipwreck. Has the letter J carved on the underside. Otherwise, in reasonable condition. Has not been opened for fear of damaging the mechanism. Pending inspection by locksmith. Wooden mask. Carven wood tribal mask. Said to bring good luck, fertility, fortune, rain, and protection from the evil spirits. Traded for a pair of socks and a pocket watch chain. 12-piece tea set. Bone china. 6 cup and 6 saucers. Acquired from an eastern dealer. Do not use. Jar of earth. A jar containing earth from a meteor impact site. Allegedly.
Assuming it is the same artifact dredged up from the same wreck mentioned by the collector, it is likely the artifact behind the rocks in the ruins is the music box we are searching for, but with no way to reach it, we will need to find some way to clear them. When we start sailing through the passageways between the rocky cliffs, we can encounter the terrible creature the hermit mentioned destroying the town. This terrible eel haunts the Gale Cliffs, hunting down any ships that move into its territory. It circles around the area, the sounds of its roaring and crashing into rocks able to be heard no matter where we are as a warning. The beast can seemingly appear out of nowhere in order to ambush the player, as the eel uses a series of tunnels that run through the bluffs to quickly move around the islands. So long as the player is fast enough, they should be able to escape from the monster, although its agility makes dodging near it particularly difficult. The eel guards a number of treasures hidden throughout the cliffs, although the more interesting ones reside closer to the outer edges. One such treasure is actually another large slab, although this one depicts a few crabs instead of cod. If we throw out a few crab traps and catch a decorator crab and a few rock crabs, the slab will reward us with the Mouth of the Deep. The Mouth of the Deep serves as a fairly decent crab pot in terms of its size, catch rate, and durability, although it is easily eclipsed by the late-game crab pots. Like the other pieces of equipment gifted by the slabs, however, this one has an increased chance of catching aberrations, making it useful when hunting for any aberrant crabs lurking around the area. There are 2 more obelisks as well that we can receive a vision from with High Panic. While the vision of one of these obelisks may seem fantastical, describing winds screaming through the cliffs and a skinless face appearing on the sails of a ship, it's all actually rather mundane. The Gale Cliffs get their name from the sounds of the winds as they work their way through the bluffs and crags, occasionally causing small tornadoes to appear over the waters. Due to the terrifying screams of the winds, as well as the rugged and naturally protected cliffs, it once hosted a great number of pirates, who have long since vanished. Why they left is unclear, whether it was simply the passing of time, getting run out by the law, or perhaps by the emergence of the serpent. The other obelisk in the area gives us an idea on where the creature came from, describing a heart of stone growing within the cliffs, writhing against its rocky womb before bursting out into the surrounding waters. However, this explanation only leads to more questions and no further answers. Lastly, another message in a bottle floats along the water's surface, the message once belonging to the wife of a fisherman.
September 9th, 1927. He still refuses to take me aboard when he's working. He's convinced I will find it dull, or the crew will be crass or otherwise intolerable. Perhaps I'm being overly needy. I know he needs time alone, but I'm so desperately bored at home when he's away. He recently installed some salvaging equipment onto the boat. I think the idea of pulling up treasure is terribly exciting. I must convince him to let me have a go.
The serpent's lair lies towards the far side of the cliffs near a large waterfall. If we try dredging around the area, we can pull up the hermit's family crest before fleeing to the safety of the Ingfell Bay. The hermit will be happy to see it return, pointing us in the direction of Ingfell where his brother resides. The man's brother used to work on the whaling ships before the whales disappeared and now spends his retirement in quiet peace. When we find the old whaler and hand over the family crest, he expresses a desire to see his brother again, but we'll need time to clear out a space where he can stay. While he's busy doing that, he asks us for a simple favor. The old whaler had set a few small flags around some rocks around the cliffs that he was originally planning on clearing out, but fearing for his safety, he remained within the town. The concerns came not from the serpent, but the cliffs itself. He hands us over a package of explosives made using a whale's tooth, then bids us farewell and to be careful of any falling rocks from the blast. The rocks the old whaler wants us to clear can be found heading into the serpent's lair, and after clearing them out, we can return to him to confirm the work has been finished. Now, all that is left to do is to sail back over to the ruins and inform the hermit about his brother's acceptance, giving him a ride over to the town. The two brothers share a solemn reunion, vowing to forgive one another for what happened all those years ago. As thanks, the old whaler tells us to come back should we need any more explosives, opening opportunities for us moving forward. Through each of the islands are fallen rocks, logs, and debris that will need to be cleared away with explosives. These passageways block off shortcuts or valuable crafting materials, but in the old ruins near Ingfell, they block off access to the next relic. Dredging it up, it appears to be an old music box, and the keyhole suggests its connection to our previous find. Before we go, however, the traveling merchant has a request for us, which will take us the rest of the game to complete. She has been cataloging rare fish that she comes across, and now there are only 4 left that she needs to find. One of these fish, the oarfish, resides somewhere within the Gale Cliffs, and should we catch it and record any information about it for her, she'll reward us with a few research parts. According to the traveling merchant, it has a rather long and fragile body, and so it is likely to seek out deeper yet calmer waters to live, and some of the underwater caverns of the Gale Cliffs may provide the perfect place for it to rest. Supposedly, the scales of this crested serpent shine with iridescent colors when exposed to the light. The oarfish is actually pretty well hidden, as there is only one location where it can be found. If we sneak back into the serpent's lair and have a closer look at the waterfall, we can pass right through it into a small cave. It's inside this cave that the oarfish lives in, but at the moment we can't catch it. It lives at the abyssal depths, and so we will have to come back later once we have unlocked the right equipment. This time, when we return the artifact to the collector, he will open his book and gift us a new ability that should make travel back to the Marrows significantly easier. This ability, Manifest, will allow us to teleport from anywhere on the map back to Blackstone Isle, and with 2 of the 5 artifacts now accounted for, the collector turns his attention towards the 3rd. The next likely place for it to have drifted would be the Stellar Basin to the southwest. Although a resort once resided there, it has long since been abandoned, but guided by a new pillar of light in the night sky, we head for more tropical waters. Arriving at the ringed archipelago, we can find a bottle floating on the water's surface, dropped by the same woman whose message we found in the Gale Cliffs.
September 14th, 1927. I have not written in a few days. I've been afflicted with some strange chill which conspires to fog my brain. I cannot seem to keep warm no matter what I do. While most of what they hauled up was junk, they eventually came up with a large wooden casket. A hush came over the crew at such a tantalizing discovery. I remember the next moments with excruciating clarity. He pried it open easily. The buckling boards cracked and groaned with relief as they splintered apart. Crimson cloth spilled out and onto the deck. The crashing waves rose to fill my ears, and I hear them still. He stared down into the open casket, then turned to me. In his eyes, I saw the void.
Whoever this woman was, she was not the only one to meet an unkind fate. Docking at an old research outpost, it appears to be partially destroyed, and while the generator is still functional, it lies inert. The hut nearby is in complete disarray, as though the people that were here left in a hurry, scattering all sorts of schematics all over the place. Heading around the corner from there, we can also find an old abandoned resort with all sorts of debris floating around it. While there are no immediate signs of what may have occurred here, we can receive a vision through the obelisk sitting in the middle of the huts. The resort was hit by a tsunami in the middle of the night, the waters receding and exposing the seabed to the sky, before the waves swept in and dragged many lost souls out into the depths. The Stellar Basin is also known for the beauty of the night, as once the sun sets, the auroras can be seen overhead. The reefs glow with a variety of blues, greens, and reds, and luminescent jellyfish float along the waves. In the center of the basin, however, is a gargantuan squid, and should we linger too long above it, it will attempt to sink our vessel. Unfortunately, the artifact we are looking for lies just above this kraken, forcing us to find another way to safely collect it. According to a nearby obelisk, this creature is not the only one of its kind, as it was once a simple spore that settled on the seabed before growing into the monstrosity before us. Thankfully for us, however, its kin were all devoured by a feeding frenzy of fish, leaving this kraken all alone. Continuing to poke around, we can find another bottle on the west side of the basin, dropped by one of the former guests of the resort.
March 7th and 8th, 1927. We're engaged to be married. He sailed us out to the very center of Stellar Basin to see the lights. We talked for hours, something we've not done in such a long time. Waiting and hoping. Sometime past midnight, as we were growing delirious and hysterical from the lack of sleep, the aurora shimmered into the skies above. When I turned to see his reaction, he was already down on one knee. I cannot even remember what he said or what I said, but I know that I said yes. The ring's beautiful, with the span of jewels going right the way around. I cannot take my eyes off it. P.S. I was not sure whether to write this under yesterday's date or today's, given that it occurred at the conjunction of days, but I feel that the news is significant enough to warrant spanning multiple entries.
Not everything here has been demolished, however, and an old naval fortress sits on an island just outside of the basin. Judging by the large satellite dish on top and the small hut built right outside, it is not quite as abandoned as the rest of the basin. Once we dock and approach the hut, we're greeted by a researcher that has been living in the area for quite some time now, having devoted her time to studying the local fauna. She used to be stationed at the research outpost we found earlier, but it was attacked one night by the Kraken, forcing her to move to this old fortress. Without her equipment or specimens, her research has come to a halt, and so she asks us to find a few of the species living in the area. Each will need a different method to find them, with the firefly squid found through fishing in the waters, the glowing octopus caught through crab traps, and the aurora jellyfish collected by trawling with a net. When we return the specimens to the researcher, she informs us that now the hard part begins. The rest of the specimens she needs can be found in deeper waters, and she was developing a way to fish that far down before the Kraken attacked the outpost. While the researcher looks for a way to keep the Kraken at bay, we return to the research outpost and once again sift through the mess. Among the scattered notes and drawers are a few pieces of specialized equipment that we can bring back onto our ship. Taking it back to the researcher, she'll thank us for bringing it back and installing the sampling device onto our boat, allowing us to fish in the abyssal zone and opening up new research for new rods that can breach the hadal zone. While we were gone, the researcher created a sort of repulsion machine that will emit a loud noise, scaring off the Kraken so long as it remains active. Taking it to the generator at the research station and hooking it up, the device will keep us safe for a short while we go fishing within the basin. There are 4 species that we will need to catch, both in and around the basin, consisting of an anglerfish, loose jaw, giant amphipod, and snailfish. When we return the samples to the researcher, she will deliver us both good news and bad news. The bad news is that the specimens we brought have an unusually high number of cellular mutations, although she is pretty sure she has figured out what has been causing it. The signs all point towards the Kraken being the cause of the mutations, although whether it is doing so passively or with intent, she is unsure. Regardless, with new equipment to fish in the depths and a way to keep the Kraken at bay, we are free to venture out towards the center of the basin and dredge up a golden ring encrusted with jewels. With over half of the artifacts now found, we can continue to look around the Stellar Basin for anything else of interest. Heading back to the resort, there is a rather dirty and hungry-looking dog resting on the shores, and if we stop to approach it, cautiously tossing it a few spare fish and patting its head, the dog will happily accompany us back onto the boat. The ocean, however, is no place for a dog, and so we will return back to the researcher to see if she will give it a more permanent home. She will happily take the dog from us, thankful to have the company, and even her sprite will change to reflect gaining a new assistant. The dog, in gratitude, will cough up a sapphire ring, which we can take and sell to the trader in Little Marrow. Another of the traveling merchant's fish can also be found here, and asking her about it, she will tell us that gulper eels live in the deepest depths imaginable, requiring specialized equipment to catch it. Few people have ever laid eyes on one, although its great maw can supposedly open wider than the length of its body. The eel can be found as soon as we enter the basin, as it is swimming in a small trench connected to the central abyss. However, we needed the proper equipment first to catch it, provided to us by the researcher. The numerous shipwrecks all over the surrounding islands can also lead us on a sort of treasure hunt. In some of the wrecks we can find scraps of paper that come together to form a map, leading us out to sea where a chest is submerged under the water, held by a chain. Whether or not we actually finish the map, this chest will still be here, meaning the player can come grab it at any time once they know where it is. The stone altar in the Stellar Basin actually doesn't lie within the basin itself, but instead on an island to the east. Whereas the last two required fish from their particular regions, this one will require 4 different types of sharks. The hammerhead shark can be found around the Stellar Basin, the bronze whaler and blacktip reef shark can be found in the Marrows during the day and night respectively, and the ghost shark can be found in the Devil's Spine in the northeast, although a few fishing spots can be found not too far from the altar. The reward this time is the Viscera crane, which can operate in both the abyssal and hadal zones. Although depending on how the player spends their research points, it is easily and quickly outclassed by the bottomless lines and fathomless wench in terms of how much space they use, what they can catch, and how fast they reel in fish. We can also sail into the waters east of the Stellar Basin on the recommendation of a few NPCs, such as the Traveling Merchant and the Mayor of Greater Marrow. On one of the islands is a photographer that has come to take pictures of the local wildlife, although during her travels to get here, some of her equipment was lost at sea. The equipment can be found on one of the islands around the Stellar Basin, and taking it back to the photographer, she will let us keep her old camera so that we can take our own pictures of whatever we come across in our travels. Talking with her, she'll give us tips on how to spot the different animals that inhabit both the waters in and around each island, but also the many birds that roost upon them. Another mysterious hooded figure can also be found in the waters between the Stellar Basin and Gale Cliffs, this time dressed in yellow. He will ask us for a variety of fish that can be found in the Stellar Basin, namely a red snapper, fangtooth, and blue crab, rewarding us with the book Advanced Fishing. Once the book has been read, our fishing speed will be increased by 15%, making future catches much quicker. Without anything else to do here, we return to the collector, and he will comment on how the ring may fetch a fortune at any sort of auction, but its value to us transcends the material. Our reward for tracking down the third artifact is the ability Banish, which we can use at any time to cast away all sorts of dangers that may attempt to sink our vessel. However, it will still need to be used with caution, as its long cooldown means anything can come to attack us without fear of reprisal. For the next location, the collector points us to the northwest, where it is likely the twisting vegetation and silty currents of the Twisted Strand have caught another artifact for us. Approaching the cluster of islands shrouded in a yellow haze, we are immediately presented with a problem. The mangrove swamp is full of dense roots and dark, silty waters, which will give our current rods and nets a lot of issues with catching anything. If we wish to catch fish here, we will need to use our research points to invest in tangle-resistant equipment before we make our way through the winding rivers. By far, the Twisting Strand is the most difficult area to navigate, as not only is the entire region a maze of trees and shorelines, but many of the rivers running through it are either narrow or have branches poking out of the waters. This means it is all too likely to accidentally bump into something while attempting to sail through, damaging our boat in the process. The trees here aren't inert, however, and may come to life when we aren't paying attention. Periodically, the roots will shift and stir, blocking off passageways while opening others. Uniquely, these roots can also spring up to attack our vessel if we are too stressed out. They aren't the only dangers in the swamp, as there are also strange, eel-like creatures that will rise up from the waters to peer around. They appear to only react to movement, as they will ignore us if we sit still when they emerge, while chasing us down if we continue to navigate the eerie waters. By themselves, the eels aren't too much of a threat, as they will rapidly inflict stress upon us if we get too close while they are chasing us down. Instead, it is the effects of high stress that are the threat, including the shifting roots of the trees. Among the roots, however, is another bottle signifying we are on the right track to another artifact.
Goldsmith & Son, number 27, Little Morrow, December 22nd, 1926. Received the sum of $50 and 0 cents in exchange for 1 silver necklace with emeralds on silver mounting. Additional notes, received a further $3 for custom engraving on reverse of mounting. Customer to return tomorrow, 23rd of December, for collection. Engraving is to be as follows. For Jay, my shining star.
A few signs with arrows posted around the entrance to the strand will lead us towards an old crashed plane, with a camp set up just underneath it. There is an old airman that has been left stranded that lives in this camp, but rather than focusing on escape, his thoughts are turned to revenge. The eels we have seen poking out of the waters are called mind suckers due to their maddening effects, which slowly picked off each of the airman's comrades. Wishing to lay their spirits to rest and to avenge their memory, the airman asks us to help him kill the mind suckers using an old mortar and some bait. 2 other planes went down in the north and in the east, each of them carrying a piece of the mortar, which will need to be retrieved before we can move further with his plan. The 2 obelisks here give us further insight into the mind suckers, with one of the 2 granting us a vision of a parasite burrowing into the corpse of some snake-like creature. As it grows and multiplies, tendrils grow out of the face of the serpent, causing it to rise once again in a twisted mockery of life. According to the other obelisk, the mind suckers caused each of the stranded pilots to go mad, hunting each other down with makeshift weapons. It would be no wonder then why the airman would want to seek revenge on the creatures, as he likely watched them turn his friends and brothers in arms upon each other, potentially even causing the airman himself to get blood on his hands. There is another bottle we can find drifting in the waters, although this one has no date written on it, and the message is much more cryptic than the others we have found.
It feels like years since I've been warm. I do not expect him to write. I just need to know that he thinks of me from time to time. He must return. I've written him another letter. This will be the last one.
Carefully making our way through the waters, collecting both the mortar barrel and frame, we can return to the airman to listen to the second part of his plan. Over the years, the airman has built a number of special traps out in the waters of the swamp. They should hold the beasts in place long enough for him to fire upon them with the mortar, and now all that is needed is the bait to lure them. The bait required is rather specialized, and so we will need to find a variety of fish to create all 3. The pungent bait will require 2 gray mullets and a gar that is found during the day. The fetid bait will require another gray mullet as well as a catfish that only comes out at night. Lastly, the reeking bait will need 2 long fin eels which also come out at night to hunt. With all of the fish collected, the airman will chop them and grind them up into a bait for us to use, sending us in the direction of each trap. At each of the traps, we can deposit one of the buckets of bait and watch as the mind suckers emerge out of the water, swimming straight to their doom. After each mind sucker dies, we collect a chunk of rotting, rubbery flesh from its cadaver, bringing it back to the airmen as proof of their demise. Satisfied, the airman will cut into each chunk of flesh, removing a necklace from one that has a brilliant gleaming emerald encased within it. The airman admits that he thought that he would be asking us by now to give him a ride elsewhere, but he has come to find that this forest feels like home now, and asks us to leave him here a little while longer. In exchange for our help, though, he offers to take whatever fish we bring him and grind it up into bait. The bait he provides proves to be rather useful, as we can take it anywhere we'd like and chuck it into the water, attracting fish from the area to our location. It can make hunting down specific fish significantly easier, as well as collecting mass amounts of fish. Before we leave, the airman asks us for another favor, although this one is much less dangerous. Not all of the crashed pilots made their way back to him, and many of their corpses are still out in the swamp. Visiting the crashed planes, we can find the dog tags of each of the fallen pilots, bringing them back to the airman so that he may build them a proper memorial. In the surrounding swamp, we can also find the last rock slab of the base game, this one requesting that we put in any sort of aberrant fish. Doing so, we can receive the tendon rod, which acts as an alternative to the anti-tangle fishing rod, though it is likely not worth using unless specifically looking for aberrations. The traveling merchant will also point us towards the 3rd exotic fish, mentioning that the Goliath tigerfish prefers to hunt in murky waters using the shade of trees as cover. This predatory fish is also particularly aggressive, with teeth so large they puncture the opposing jaw. The Goliath tigerfish can be found by sailing down the rivers towards the south, using a set of explosives to clear away the fallen logs blocking our path to it. Another hooded figure, this one in purple, waits patiently for us on an island south of the Twisted Strand, and once again asks for more fish. He will request from us a tarpon that can be found in the Twisted Strand, a horseshoe crab that can be caught in a trap in the silty waters, and lastly a barrel eye in the abyssal waters around the Stellar Basin. Handing each one over, the hooded figure will give us the book Pushing the Limit, Engines. Once read, the book will provide a 7.5% increase to our speed per engine installed, making it much more efficient to install lots of smaller engines rather than relying on one or two larger ones. Taking the necklace back to the collector, he will grant us the final ability from the book, named Atrophy. Using Atrophy, a fishing spot can be instantly harvested of all its fish, with a higher chance of finding aberrations, but doing so will significantly weaken the rate of it replenishing. The last artifact lies in the northeast, within the volcanic islands of the Devil's Spine. These islands are covered in ancient, decaying ruins from some long-forgotten civilization, and while we may not expect to find inhabitants here, there is one we can find in an old temple. This fanatic has been awaiting the arrival of one who will take up the mantle after him, and after asking us a series of questions concludes we are to be his new protege. In order to complete the ritual, the fanatic instructs us to seek out the 3 fathomless flames on each island, and bring them back to light the braziers held by the 3 robed statues. Before we leave this island to hunt for the flames, there are actually some words scrawled into some of the pillars in 2 different sets of writing. One serves as a promise, and the other as a warning. These writings are actually here to inform us of what sort of dangers we can find lurking within the Devil's Spine, as well as how to avoid them. All throughout the waters are piranhas that swim around chasing us if we get too close. They will attempt to attach themselves onto our boat if they manage to catch us, although their teeth do no damage to the vessel. Instead, they will slow us down, disabling our engines, and will call out to something far worse. The Unseeing Mother is a much larger piranha that circles around the island chain, using the chittering of her children in order to guide her around. They also inform her of food that has wandered into their domain, and the calls of the piranhas on our boat will lure her directly to us. Luckily, the piranhas can be forced back using Banish, although the island has other ways to fend them off. Hydrothermal vents can be found all around the islands, acting as a deterrent for any piranhas chasing us. Should we lure them into a vent, they will be sent shrieking back to safety, giving up their hunt and allowing us to continue our exploration. An exploration that begins with another note bobbing in the water.
My darling, I have found you at last. When you left, I was scattered to the winds, but now I feel almost whole again. There's just one thing left to do. Throw me back.
In order for us to fish in the Devil's Spine, much like the Twisted Strand, we will need specialized rods and trolls suited to the high temperatures. Once they have been researched and set up on our vessel, our work can begin. As we make our way around, we can find a few spots to dredge up old treasures from the fallen civilization, including a broken tablet bearing an odd rune on it. If we take it to the trader in Little Marrow to assess its value, he will look at it with both surprise and recognition. He had found another tablet like this one years ago, and by putting the 2 together, they almost seem to fit into a larger whole. If we continue to search around the ruins, we can find 2 other pieces of the tablet, and bringing it back to the trader, he will repair it. Now fused together, the full text can be read, talking about a guiding light to protect us. The only guiding light in the area is the lighthouse at Greater Marrow, and seeing as the tablet predates the town, it is much more likely we will need to look elsewhere. To understand where, we will need to look towards the past, and another of the obelisks may help to grant a clearer picture. Through another vision, we can see the Leviathan that stalks the deeper waters emerge, its head reaching up to the top of a great spire near the center of the great civilization. It watches the flames dance along the top, almost singing to it before returning to the depths. Although the spire has been long since extinguished, it still stands, and we can dock at the base. When we ascend the stairs, we can find a slot to place the fuse tablet into and open a sealed door, finding a jewel inset into some sort of device, known as the Flame of the Sky. This light is the best in the game in terms of both space and efficiency, and was likely once used to focus the light of the fire as a sort of ancient lighthouse. As for what exactly happened to the civilization, we can find our answers in a room at the bottom of the lighthouse, depicting its rise and fall. In the first painting are people flocking towards a great tower of light whose radiance drives back a manner of tentacled horrors. The second painting, however, shows us a terrible volcanic eruption causing terrible damage to the tower, resulting in all sorts of monstrosities rampaging through the civilization and devouring all they come across. It doesn't show us much, but it is all we need to know to understand the Marrows hang upon a knife's edge. The lighthouse atop the cliffs keeps whatever horrors lurk below at bay as a sort of spiritual successor to the ruined spire in the Devil's Spine, and should that light ever go out, it is likely that these waters will suffer the same fate as the lost civilization. Knowing this, it also paints one monstrosity in a very different light. The Leviathan that haunts the depths isn't so much a jailer for all those that live here as much as it is a protector. It kept a watch over the flames of the old lighthouse until it was destroyed during the volcanic eruption, and even now it maintains its duty to guard these waters from all sorts of unfathomable horrors in the depths, and those that would see their interests realized. What sorts of horrors these are can be found through the last obelisk in the base game, where we can witness dreadful monsters crawling out of the darkness before a membrane covers the space where they emerged. What these monsters are is left unclear, as they could be the true origins of the monstrous serpent's egg, the kraken's spores, the minesucker's parasites, and the unseeing mother and her children. Alternatively, these monsters might be the aberrations we have been fishing up, but whatever it is, some sort of jailer is keeping something far worse caged beneath the waves. Returning to our task at hand, we can find one last bottle floating in the water, pointing us towards what this last relic we are searching for could possibly be.
June 1st, 1927. Yesterday was the reading of his mother's will. Most of the remaining estate went directly to him, of course, but to my surprise, she bequeathed me her pocket watch. Curious, I'm not fond of the thing, but I know that taking it will mean a lot to him. I cannot help but feel it's some veiled jab at me from beyond the grave. She was the type to do such a thing. Was I late on some occasion? I cannot recall.
The flames we seek are each contained within rock slabs that will require us to hunt down various fish in order to open them. The first and simplest will only require a ghost shark and pale skate, while the second will ask for a squat lobster and spider crab, which will necessitate the use of traps. The third slab, however, is much more open with what it is asking for, as all we need to do is supply it with 2 aberrant fish. Once a slab has been opened, we can find all sorts of treasures within, along with a cold blue flame. It appears to be an unnatural fire with dark shapes flickering within it, but aren't the only odd relic within the slabs. Upon opening the final one, we will be gifted with the encrusted talisman, whose only purpose is to increase our chances of catching aberrations. Taking the fathomless flames back to the fanatic and using them to light the braziers, he will begin his ritual. As a sort of focus, he pulls out an old pocket watch and speaks in a strange and unknown language, causing the flames to swell and writhe. Only once he steps into the flames do they vanish, and all that is left is a pile of ash and an uncharred pocket watch. We can take the pocket watch to return to the collector, and before we do, there are a few things left for us to do among the volcanic waters. The last of the fish the wandering merchant is looking for can be found here, and in her opinion, the fish has a rather primordial feeling to it. However, she is unsure of where to start looking. The coelacanth is rather easy to find, simply being hidden behind some rocks near the merchant's pontoon that can be blown away with explosives. Between the Devil's Spine and Twisted Strand, we can also find another hooded figure, this one dressed in red. Once again, this figure will ask us to collect 3 fish for him, a cusk eel, a sailfish, and a frilled shark. This time, the book we are awarded with will make our equipment that uses durability, such as trawl nets and crab traps, degrade 15% slower. With all of the artifacts assembled, we may return to the collector and seek the ending of the game, but before we do that, I would like to take a bit of a detour. Dredge received 2 pieces of DLC in the form of the Pale Reach and the Iron Rig, which add in a new area for us to explore as well as adding more to the existing game. Before we complete our adventure, I would like to take a look at both of these expansions and the mysteries they bring with them. To begin the Pale Reach, we will need to head far down into the south past the Gale Cliffs and Stellar Basin, and out past open waters. There on the horizon is a large deposit of ice that has drifted up from somewhere unknown, and as we approach we can see we are not the first ones to arrive. The traveling merchant is waiting for us on her pontoon, commenting how she also came here to poke around, finding an abandoned camp full of old equipment and various schematics. Some of this equipment can be immediately put to use, such as a new rod in order to catch fish under the ice, but the schematics will need to be assembled. The most interesting thing of note inside the workshop are blueprints for an icebreaker that can be fashioned onto the front of a small boat, allowing it to break through some of the smaller fields of floating ice. It will require several specialized plates, however, but if we can find some of the pieces, the merchant will assemble it for us. Venturing into the waters through the ice, we can also come across the photographer who has come to take pictures of the unique wildlife. She had seen the horn of a narwhal breaching the surface of the water behind a wall of ice and has been waiting for an opportunity to get a better look at it. We can bring some fish to use as bait, hoping to lure the beast into a more favorable position, and sitting by the photographer, we wait for it to arrive. Whatever that creature is, it's definitely unnatural, and the photographer decides that she isn't going to wait around to see it again. She heads back north for warmer waters while we press onwards to see what secrets lie within the cold. Inside, we find a large open space that we can sail around in, along with an abandoned camp on an iceberg near the center. Checking in on the camp, there is a large block of ice with the dark figure of a man trapped inside, and as we press our ears to the ice, we can hear him whispering to us. The man inside was once the captain of a crew that was sent out to explore the ice field before he and his men heard a whisper from beneath the ice. They followed its call, offering up 3 sacrifices to open 3 eyes, but now a 4th one remains. The captain warns us to flee as the eyes know we are here and are watching us. He pleads with us to not break the ice, and if we try to, we won't have the necessary equipment to do it. In order to start piecing together what happened to the captain and his crew, we need only enter the abandoned cabin and find his old journals sitting on the table.
May 30th, 1847. Arrived at the floating sea ice amidst particularly thick fog. A few channels could be seen leading into the ice, though sizable chunks float in our way, posing a hazard. I have ordered us to moor against the outer ice wall while the engineers make adjustments to better prepare the vessel. June 1st, 1847. The vessel was pursued by a particularly aggressive narwhal. Some men placed fish on the ice nearby in an effort to distract it. It appeared to work, though only for a time. It resurfaced and needed satiating repeatedly. If we can't find a more permanent solution to the beast, we'll have to make sure we keep enough fish on hand to placate it. June 5th, 1847. As I lay falling asleep, the most almighty voice spoke unto me. It resounded from the thick ice below, at once both powerful and ethereal. There was no mistaking this as a trick of the wind, nor jest of the crew. It did not pause for a response or acknowledgement, but whispered a cryptic prophecy. At first I could not make sense of it. 3 listeners shall hear the heart, and that I should indulge these listeners. It spoke of boundless well from the stars, and of eyes opening unto the world. The rest of my sleep was feverish, as my mind was plagued with the sound of the voice. It spun in my head, echoing ever louder. In the morning, the boatswain and the navigator came to see me separately, claiming to have heard a sound like a heartbeat as the men were digging yesterday. They indicated a desire to explore the eastern and western reaches of the ice field. I shall indulge them.
There are several pieces of information we can glean from these logs, one of which is how to deal with the narwhal. The map of the Pale Reach is made up of a central lake with several passageways heading off in each cardinal direction, although only the northern entrance is accessible for the moment. Although this central area connects to each other channel through the ice, it is also the home of the narwhal. We can watch the telltale glowing horn break through the waves as it starts to hunt us, tearing into our ship should it ever catch us, and rarely giving us an opportunity to fish within the central area. However, the beast can be sated, if only for a little while. At several points along the ice, we can find spots where we can deposit fish as a sort of offering to it. Once filled, the narwhal will happily devour our gift to it, leaving us alone for a while to fish peacefully in the central area, but it can also be used to clear the ice leading to the eastern and western channels. Just as we did with the entrance, we can leave fish on the ice blocking our way and allow the narwhal to smash through it. As the creature will only hunt within the central area, we will be left free to explore what else lies within the ice. Heading through the channel towards the eastern terminus, we come across a great clawed hand reaching up through the depths, with frozen equipment nearby. Directly underneath the massive claw is another shadowed figure trapped in a block of ice. Speaking with them, they beg us to free them, and upon asking who is in there and what could have happened to them, we are left with more questions than answers. The one inside tells us that they are the boatswain that was once a member of the expedition. After the men had seen lights in the ice, the boatswain had traveled east with the captain, hearing some sort of heartbeat under the ice as it cracked and broke apart. They traveled through the night, and the last thing the boatswain remembers is a searing pain, the darkness, and the cold of the claws. When we inspect the discarded equipment, the only items of any note are the boatswain's old journals.
June 2nd, 1847. Captain ordered us to make camp on the ice in the center of the lagoon. After we saw those lights in the ice, everyone's got treasure on their minds. Treasure hunting isn't exactly what the expedition was commissioned for, but given the captain gets the lion's share of whatever we find, it doesn't surprise me he's willing to bend the rules a bit. We'll start digging after the camp's done. June 4th, 1847. Spent the day digging down in the ice. Shovels and ice picks. Can't remember the last time I was this tired. We were only allowed 2 short breaks all day. Down in the pit, as I rested with my back against the ice, I started hearing something. It was different to the sounds of the picks. They were short and sharp. This was low, a rumble from deeper down. On my first break, it was occasional, only a few each minute, but by my second break, it had quickened like a heartbeat. June 5th, 1847. The captain overheard me telling some of the others about the sound I heard in the pit. Before I knew it, I was in front of his desk, sure I was about to have my pay docked. To my great surprise, he seemed to know something of it already. He was keen on hearing it described over and over. He wants me to help locate the source of it. When he pressed me on it further, I said that it did seem to be coming from the east. Tomorrow, we're setting off to see if we can find it. Perhaps I shall get a bonus after this is done.
The only other lead for us to chase is to search around the western bearing, and after having the narwhal clear the way for us again, and navigating through the ice, we can find another great hand. Among the abandoned equipment, we can find another set of journals, once belonging to the navigator.
June 4th, 1847. The men spent the whole day digging. They passed up chunks of ice, some as brilliant as crystal, others of a deepest blue, more beautiful than sapphires. But none held the glow we have seen in the night. I did notice a disturbance in the ice to the west. Began as a periodic, distant rumble. As the men dug deeper, the pulsating quickened, strengthening until I could see the ice shifting on the surface. I shall have to inform the captain. It may well be the narwhal creature we saw earlier, though this did seem much larger. As I write this, I can already feel my eyes closing. I will have to wait until the morning. June 7th, 1847. This morning, the captain appeared out of the fog, but went alone. Apparently, the boatswain remained at the camp in the east, waiting for nightfall. They were unsuccessful in their search, but it does make sense that the lights would be more visible at night. Tomorrow, we're to journey together to the west, towards the shifting ice that I reported. June 8th, 1847. We are alone on a small island of ice. After hours of rowing through the narrow channels, it rose through the fog. A gargantuan, monstrous claw reaching from the deep. Whatever creature it once belonged to must be long dead, as the claw is frozen solid. I wanted to turn back immediately, but the captain insisted we investigate. He is on edge, his head turning this way and that, listening for the slightest sound. He is convinced something will happen after dark. As the last light from the cold sun fades, I have the sense that it will be a long, long night.
Under the claw's shadow is a third block of ice, the figure inside pleading with us to free them from this prison. This figure is the navigator, who is originally in charge of charting the ice but encountered some creature from the beyond. They tell us that as the crew dug through the ice looking for treasure, they awoke something underneath, which the captain took the boatswain to the east to go find. When the captain returned alone, he took the navigator to the west, leaving them to be claimed by the claw. If we check the waters near the captain, the boatswain, and the navigator, we can dredge up the specialized pieces of the icebreaker the expedition used to make their way through the frozen waters. Taking it back to the traveling merchant, she will repair it using the expedition's old tools, and attach it to the front of our ship to aid our exploration. With the icebreaker, we can smash through the smaller chunks of ice that float through the water, opening up new areas for us to poke around in. And before we leave, the merchant will mention something else the expedition's schematics mentioned. Apparently, they had also been working on creating some sort of ice shaper that would allow them to cut apart chunks of ice to be used for refrigeration. The ice shaper can be found behind some of the floating chunks of ice, needing to be hauled up out of the depths. But once it has been brought back to the merchant, she will offer ice blocks to sell. These blocks of ice will slowly melt away, but will slow the rate of decomposition of any fish we catch, keeping them fresher for longer. With the icebreaker, we can also now access the southern locus, where a yellow light glows from behind the towering walls of ice. Here, trapped in a frozen prison of its own, is a towering, monstrous creature with a glowing yellow horn. On a small patch of ice nearby is a final frozen figure begging for us to use the axes to free them all and undo the work of the betrayer, and at last we can learn of what actually happened to the lost expedition. This final damned soul is the first officer, who is supposed to be in charge of the crew's safety, but he laments that he has failed them all. When the crew first arrived and saw a light in the south, the captain and the first officer rode out alone to investigate. As they drew closer, the captain grew restless, having spent a few nights without sleep. When the glowing horn came into view, the two of them pulled onto the shore of the ice, where the captain almost seemed to be speaking with the entity. The captain had said that he alone was chosen, and the two of them would get into an argument, resulting in the captain strangling the first officer to death. Now his soul has remained trapped within this prison of ice, one sacrifice of many to open this abomination's many eyes. The officer tells us to find the axes and use them to free each of the captain's sacrifices so that we may stop this monster's heart, as it should not be allowed to arise. As we search around for the axes, we can find two more obelisks on the shores of the ice. From one, we can witness the battle of two primeval titans. One, of tooth and spine, may refer to the Leviathan protecting the waters, and the creature of horn and tail being the monster we found at the southern locus. The result of this battle was the death of the horned monster, its body torn apart into many pieces. These pieces, however, would reach out to one another, attempting to repair itself, but whatever plans it held were halted as the fragments rose to the surface. Around where they emerged, ice began to form, halting the beast's reincarnation for an age. From another obelisk, we receive another vision from the view of the sundered creature. It watched as invaders arrived on wooden vessels using angled metal to carve away at the ice. It could see greed and pride within their hearts, tools to be used and twisted to free itself from the ice. These tools of angled metal were ice axes brought by the crew for their expedition, which have been lost to the darkness of the cold waters. One can be found near each of the frozen crew members, hidden behind the walls of floating ice chunks. Breaking through the walls and collecting the axes, we can visit each of the four souls and shatter their cages. With each one we free, another eye of the Titan will close, and the members of the crew will thank us for granting them the peace of death. That is, however, except for the captain, who pleads with us to not shatter the ice until even his soul has been released. As they disappear, they leave behind their frozen hearts of stone, with wispy starlight trailing off of them. Once the last of the crew has been freed and the last of the eyes has been closed, the Titan will die its final death, with the horn crumbling apart and falling into the water. Dredging up a fragment of the horn, we can earn ourselves the Orus Anchor. This anchor is a rather useful tool for quickly moving around the map, as when we drop it into the water, it will create a portal that will bring us back to Blackstone Isle. The portal works both ways, allowing us to create a quick gate from the center of the map to wherever we would like to drop it. The portal isn't permanent either, and we can pick it up and move it around as we wish. With the 4 frozen hearts, we can seek out a stone slab hidden on a shore between some floating ice chunks, and use them to earn ourselves the best net in the game, the Radiant Troll Net. While it does not have as much capacity or durability as the heavy-duty Troll Net, the Radiant Troll Net takes up less space on the boat while keeping the same yield rate. On top of this, the Radiant Troll Net can catch fish from the ice, coastal, shallow, and oceanic zones, while the heavy-duty Troll Net will only collect coastal and oceanic. We can now complete any remaining objectives for us to fill, such as using the Radiant Troll Net to try and catch a colossal squid, or find the Sleeper Shark as the last exotic fish of the game, despite not being required to complete the Merchant's questline. If we sail around the outer edges of the Pale Reach, we will eventually come across a 5th hooded figure, this one dressed in frozen white robes. This hooded figure is the most difficult out of them all to complete, as they will ask you to bring them aberrated versions of various fish, requiring the use of all 3 methods of fishing. The fractaline ice fish can be found through normal fishing as well as trawling, and this is where the difficulty of the quest comes from. The ice fish has 3 different types of aberrations, and while we look for the fractaline variety, we are just as likely to also catch a thawed or astral aberration instead. Thankfully, once we have found a fractaline ice fish, we need only use crab traps to find the aberrated sea stars called the Fallen Stars, and Trollnet to find the aberrated stargazer called a Craterous Seer. With all 3 of them collected and handed over, the hooded figure will give us a Book of Astral Symbols, which will grant us a passive 4% boost in our chances to catch an aberrated fish. It's useful for attempting to fill out our journal by catching every species of fish in the game along with their aberrations, but isn't very useful outside of that. With this book, however, the Pale Reach lies silent once again, and so we head back north to leave it to its solemn drifting. The second and final DLC for Dredge is the Iron Rig, which adds in a large drilling platform on the northern side of the map. We can dock at a small wharf just under the rig and approach a nearby elevator where a man in work attire will greet us. This man is the foreman in charge of overseeing the Iron Haven Corporation's new drilling rig, and at the moment he is running behind schedule. The rig has had all of its foundations laid down, and the only problem left to deal with before they can get it operational is a matter of supplies to finish setting up. Apparently, the various ships they sent out to deliver the crates of supplies keep going missing, and while the foreman wouldn't normally ask a civilian for help, we're his last hope. Marking the last known locations of the various ships, the foreman will ask us to collect some of the crates and bring them back, introducing us to the primary resource we will need to be collecting. All over the map are Iron Haven crates that can be dredged up and brought back to the platform for the purposes of upgrading the rig, purchasing new equipment, and researching new upgrades and equipment. We only need 2 crates to start off with, and once we bring them back to the foreman, he uses them to get the rig's generator operational. However, the Iron Haven Corporation never supplied them with any fuel to actually power the generator, and so while the foreman looks into how to turn it on, we visit the science lab and introduce ourselves to the head scientist. He'll inquire into what sorts of fish we have found in these waters before admitting that his lab has also been a victim of the supply shortage. Bringing in another crate, we can get the science lab constructed, with the foreman delivering some good news about the generator. The corporation never sent out any fuel as the generator uses biofuel. However, they neglected to send any sort of equipment to harvest the biomass needed to get it running. The foreman will act as a sort of fishmonger, paying us for any fish we bring him in order to keep the generator running. And once we have brought him enough to get it to turn on, he orders the crew to turn on the drill. The drill managed to breach through the ocean floor, allowing the scientist to properly begin his research, but the resulting fissure is much larger than its initial calculation predicted. Under his suggestion, the foreman cuts power to the drill while they figure out what to do next, as well as figure out how the fissure may have affected the local area. As they manage to get the factory operational, the scientist hands over a fishing rod with the corporation's latest advancements, before sending us on our way. We can also take a trip to the foundry and the tech lab, meeting the founder and the engineer, and use a few more crates to unlock their buildings. As we progress through the DLC, each of the various buildings can be upgraded to open up additional services on the platform. The foundry offers a place for us to exchange upgrade materials such as wood or spare parts for Ironhaven crates and vice versa. The founder will also operate the undermarket by the time we return from our investigation, serving the same role as the shipwright's shop in Greater Marrow. From the tech lab, we can use crates and research parts to unlock new specialized equipment and upgrades to our lights, our foghorn, and our telescope. The modular upgrades unlocked later are more numerical in nature, increasing things such as the speed of our reeling or our backwards mobility. The engineer can also be found within the factory, where the primary upgrades to our equipment can be found. Our standard rods are unable to catch the new fish found in each area, and so we will need to upgrade them with crates into a more advanced form. Following the trail of the glowing fissure along the seafloor, it will lead us towards Steel Point in the Marrows, where some kind of ooze or oil has bubbled to the surface. Within this ooze are swirling pockets where we can fish. The fish that require the use of the advanced rods will yield a new minigame involving alternating a series of paddles. Unlike the other minigames, the reel will not be set back by mistiming a button, as the fish will instead be caught whether the reel on the side reaches the top or the ball reaches the end of the track. As well, the fish we find here are just a little bit strange. Some, like the paddlefish or the sea cucumbers caught in crab traps, are species that are still present today, but others, like the osteostachin and the tully monstrum, have been extinct for hundreds of millions of years. Collecting these samples and bringing them back to the scientist, he'll theorize the fissure likely disturbed some of the fish from deeper down in the water column, causing some species that were thought to be extinct to come out of hiding. However, as the scientist begins to run a few tests, the foreman calls out through a microphone, before the rig is rocked by tremors. The reservoir beneath the drill is even more unstable than the scientist first believed, as even retracting the drill was enough to make the fissure even worse. More contaminants have also leaked out, now coating the Gale Cliffs, and as they had been anticipating this to happen again, the engineer has designed a device to try and clear away the ooze. Upgrading the factory to its second tier, we can purchase a specialized trawl that will remove the oil from the water, storing it in specialized canisters that we can bring back to the scientist for further research. As we clear away the oil, we can become much more familiar with the threats that it poses. Most effects are not too severe and are, if anything, just a little annoying. Sometimes bubbles will pop out of the ooze, splattering the oil onto our deck and taking up inventory space. And as we fish around, eyed tentacles will try to jump onto our vessel to scatter more oil. Depending on our level of panic, tentacles may emerge from the ooze to try and swat us away, and if we are unlucky enough to be severely panicking, a horrid gleaming Goliath will emerge and chase us down. While we gather the oil, we also head over to the Gale Cliffs for more samples, namely the nautilus, lancetfish, solicina, and trilobite. Returning everything to the scientist, he will draw a number of blood samples from each fish. Some yield typical red blood, while others produce a black tar-like substance that crawls up the syringe. Whatever conversation we are having, however, is cut off as a loud rumbling rises from beneath the platform. Looking out the window, several tentacles reach out from the depths and wrap around the legs of the platform, causing the fissure to spread to the Stellar Basin. This creature spooks the scientist as he realizes whatever it is. He looks to us for help as he does know of one person that may be able to help with the situation. Long ago, he had a student that was developing a technology to be able to communicate with the titans of the depths. She did not agree with the Ironhaven Corporation's practices, however, and so the scientist pulled some strings to have her reposted to a remote lab in the Stellar Basin. He asks us to see how her research has come along with collecting more specimens within the area. These specimens have also swam up through the oil, and so we can catch a tripod spiderfish, eagle shark, Carrig Macella, and a sea slug to bring back. When we deliver them to the scientist, he will connect each of them up to a series of electrodes, talking about how the brains of fish are rather primitive. Supposedly, the final shape of the mind is retained by the brain upon death, and the scientist talks about extracting it as he pulls a switch. The muscles of the dead fish jolt and tense as electricity flows through them before laying still once more. Whatever it is he extracted from each fish, the monitors all display the same image of some empty void. The scientist's former student is actually the researcher positioned by the old fortress. Informing her of the drilling platform and the scientist, she will recall her time studying under her teacher, as well as the whispers and strange and esoteric diagrams present in his office. She questions whether we actually know what we're doing by helping out the Ironhaven Corporation before the conversation turns to her defensive measures. The device works on the same principles as the repulsion device used to cause the Kraken in the bay to flee. It broadcasts the word flee by broadcasting the vocalized panic response of every known animal. While the researcher does not care about the Ironhaven Corporation, she isn't willing to let the innocent workers suffer for the company's actions, and hands over the schematics for how to build the device. We can build the defense tower using an Ironhaven crate and a dark canister of oil. Now completed, the foreman will turn on the device, releasing the fearful call. Thankfully, the tentacles will retreat back down into the depths, but as we head down off of the tower, we find the foreman arguing with an executive of the Ironhaven Corporation. The executive is berating the foreman for messing up the whole operation by losing supply shipments and involving locals. Not only that, but he has delayed the project by stopping the drill from running, and so the executive tells the crew to turn it back on. As it descends back down, the fissure spreads into the Twisted Strand. The executive thanks us for what we have done so far and that only the fleet services are left to be constructed. He cuts a deal with us that if we can bring supplies to bring the fleet online, then his workers will outfit our vessel with an upgrade to our hull, maximizing the space. After that, our services will no longer be required as their operation is highly confidential. As we leave, I want to take a brief look at the items that the Iron Rig introduces, as there are quite a few useful things we can purchase for raw materials. Some supplies we can keep on our ship include a soothing tea to drink to remove our current level of panic, a harvester's repair kit to perform repairs to our nets and crab pots while at sea, as well as a hull repair kit for emergency repairs. Once we upgrade the factory to Tier 4, we can unlock several new types of bait. The crab bait will allow us to harvest a variety of crabs from around the area when used, and is overall the least interesting of the new bait types. The exotic bait, however, can be used to find several rare types of fish. These exotic fish are the same ones the traveling merchant had us seek out. With this bait, we can not only attempt to catch them again, but also find any aberrated versions of them. Speaking of aberrations, the aberrated bait will draw any aberrations to it, making it easier to find and catch them for either a bigger payday or to help finish the player's collection. Searching through the dense swampland of the Twisted Strand, we can fish up the Opabenia, Boreaspis, Xiphanctinus, and Nipponite to bring back to the scientist. By this point, he appears to be losing his mind, simply expecting us to bring him the samples needed for his research. With the corporate management now on the rig, the pressure is starting to get to him, and so all that is left for him to do is to continue with his research. Putting the new specimens into a sort of centrifuge, he'll watch as various needles transcribe some sort of ascension, with a dark fluid filling a tube connected to the chamber. The scientist continues to ramble as outside, the executive is ordering the foreman to continue drilling down, aiming to reach the next layer of the seafloor. Despite the foreman's protests, he orders the drill to resume its operations. A loud roaring noise gives them pause, however, as the Leviathan makes itself known. Its presence further disturbs the fissure, causing it to extend into the devil's spine, and spooking the staff aboard the rig. The Leviathan is the reason the ships never arrived at the rig, devouring them to prevent the Ironhaven corporations from proceeding with their operations. Despite putting the lives of the crew in danger, the executive tells everyone to resume their operations. The foreman, however, is convinced that whatever is down there should be left well enough alone. Out of options, he asks us for one last favor. If the crew shut down the operation, the consequences from the Iron Haven Corporation would follow them for the rest of their lives, and so far they have been unable to convince the executive to shut it all down. If, however, the rig were to be sabotaged by the local fauna, it could potentially get him to see reason. If the defenses were to suddenly stop, it would leave the rig defenseless and free to be attacked once again by the tentacles. The one who would know best how to sabotage the defenses would be the researcher, as she was the one who designed it, and checking in with the scientist before we leave, we find him having lost his mind. He is cowering behind his map of the nearby waters, promising his work is nearly complete. Heading back to the Stellar Basin, we ask the researcher how best to disable the device, although she reminds us of how the machine actually works, and how to use it against itself. The device broadcasts a single word, which at the moment is set to flee. The researcher does have other recordings, however, and rather than a warning, she offers us an invitation. She gives us the blueprints for a new signal to broadcast, which should make the attack by the monster beneath the rig look like an accident. The closest analog in the human tongue is Rise, and we only need an Iron Haven crate and a dark canister in order to build it. While we collect these materials, we can also collect the last samples needed within the Devil's Spine, helping to finish the scientist's work. This time we come across a Dunkleosteus, a giant dragonfish, a Vetulicolia, and a sea scorpion, bringing them back to the rig. Once we bring them back to the scientist, however, he will quickly dash forward, revealing to us that he's become something far from human. After devouring the sea scorpion, he will look up to us and emit a guttural cry, before sprinting towards the nearest window. Whatever the scientist has become will escape into the shadows of the deep ocean, and finding him again will be no easy feat. Using the aberrated bait, there is a small chance that we will reel in a deep form. This grotesque carcass is the ultimate fate of the scientist, having been infected by the black and oily blood that now stains the waters. Taking the supplies to the defense grid, we can set up the signal to instead broadcast the new message, and as the sound changes, the waves start to tremble. The executive managed to escape on a helicopter, but the rest of the crew will need to wait for the corporation to send out more to help them evacuate. Thankfully, the main buildings atop the platform are relatively undamaged, and so the crew offers to provide us with their services until they are eventually rescued. All that is now left to do is to return the final artifact to the collector, and while he hasn't revealed too much about himself to us, we can still piece together who this man is and why he's sending us to fetch these relics. The answers lie in the bottles floating in the water that were once the pages of a journal written by a woman by the name of Julie. The game takes place around the early to mid-1900s, and without a clear date, we have no idea just how long ago the troubles in these waters have been going on for. But we do know when they started, as Julie's entries start on March 6th, 1927. All of this madness, all of the horrors we have endured, all started with a question asked beneath a beautiful night sky in the middle of the Stellar Basin, where a ring was presented to Julie. After that night, Julie would be engaged and married only months later in August. During this time, her fiancé's mother would pass away, passing on her lonely estate to her son and a pocket watch to her daughter-in-law. On the first day of their honeymoon, the two would purchase a fishing boat to support themselves, and Julie's fiancé spent the evening performing a special renaming ceremony for the vessel. What was once the ocean's riches was renamed to Julie after the man's true love, and all that held the old name was thrown away. Julie's husband was insistent upon this, as he believed keeping anything with the old name was bad luck. Julie, however, still liked the old name and kept a keychain bearing it. Their second day was spent sailing around the inlets behind Greater Marrow, where the vessel would be struck by a rock appearing out of nowhere. While the vessel wasn't too damaged, nor was anything too important lost, with the potential exception of an embroidered handkerchief. This started her husband's descent into a superstitious paranoia, believing he had performed the rite incorrectly, and now bad luck was doomed to follow the boat. The man worked as a fisherman, leaving Julie behind when he went to work, citing that she would either find the work to be dull or the crew to be rather crass. What Julie found boring, however, was instead sitting around and waiting for her husband to return home each day. It would only be a few weeks after the renaming ceremony on September 9th that Julie would take an interest in the boat once again, as her husband and his crew installed salvaging equipment on the back of it. Supposedly, he was looking for treasure beneath the waves, and finding the idea exciting, Julie would convince her husband to let her come along. Julie's final dated message would be on September 14th, after suffering from some terrible affliction over the past few days. A fog was settling over her mind, and she found no warmth could alleviate the chill that ran through her bones, and yet Julie would insist she come treasure hunting with her husband. It was on that day that they found what it was her husband had been searching for. It was a simple and unassuming wooden box, but when the men pried it open, a roiling fog began to pour out. The fog would cling to the surface of the waters, spreading all throughout the region and haunting it even to this day. And tumbling out of the box would be a book wrapped in crimson cloth, adorned with silver ornamentation. At what point Julie died is uncertain. It is possible that she lived for days or weeks after they found the book. It is also just as likely that she died that very night. Whether her husband actively sought out the tome or happened upon it by accident, it would guide him down a dark and horrific path. Due to her sickness, however, I believe Julie died sometime after the wedding, and the cold she felt was the chill of death. Even in death, however, Julie still left messages behind, telling us of the cold that she cannot escape, and a desire for her husband to throw her back. This would explain why her husband had begun his treasure hunt, searching for a book of forbidden knowledge to seek a way to return his deceased wife back to him. Who this man is and where the book now resides isn't too hard to piece together, as we can see it in the hands of the collector when we return to the old manor on Blackstone Isle, the manor he inherited from his deceased mother, which now exists in a state of disrepair. He senses our arrival by the ticking of the pocket watch and tells us that the only steps left for us to take is to perform the ritual. The two of us wait for when the darkness is at its thickest, and this time when we leave Blackstone Isle, the collector will be with us. We will be guided towards one last pillar of light just behind Greater Marrow, where we can watch the collector perform the rite. Speaking words from the Crimson Book, he will offer a number of mementos of his fallen beloved. A handkerchief with her initial embroidered upon it, a music box and associated key he had purchased for her, the engagement ring she wore around her finger, a jeweled necklace gifted to her the previous December, and a pocket watch given to her by his mother. The artifacts are the tether to Julie's soul, and by casting them into the waters, the collector opens the door for Julie to return home. The door to the beyond may have been opened for Julie, but it allowed something else to slip through with her. As the credits roll, we see the Marrows engulfed in flames, the lighthouse extinguished, and the town lies dead. It is the same vision we received from the first obelisk we encountered, warning us of what this path would bring. It is not, however, our only path to follow. If we seek an alternative ending, it will take a little more legwork once we have found the pocket watch. Throughout our journey, it is entirely likely that we will stumble upon a few abandoned camps scattered across the various isles, often with supplies left behind or odd symbols scribbled into the sand. Only once we have collected all of the relics will we find smoke rising from a campfire in the middle of one of these camps, seeing the one hopping around between them is currently resting there. Docking nearby and going to talk with them, we find the old mayor of Little Marrow before he had lost his mind. He had apparently spent a few days screaming at the ocean to throw it back while tossing around people's belongings before eventually vanishing. When he sees us, he asks us whether or not we threw the book back, and when he sees our confusion, he will tell us about a husband and wife who found the book out at sea, unleashing a great terror wrapped in fog that sunk their vessel. When they washed onto shore, the man was still tightly gripping that book, and no matter how many people told him to cast it back into the ocean, the man refused. If we want more information, the old mayor tells us to visit the lighthouse keeper, as she was there to witness what happened on that terrible night, and knows where the book must be returned. Returning to Greater Marrow and approaching the lighthouse, the keeper will look at us with pity. She will shudder at the mention of the book, telling us that we need to throw it back, and that we need to move on for our own sake as well as for Julie's. We'll return to Blackstone Isle, giving the collector the pocket watch, but rather than taking him with us, we'll start to question him about the book. He'll play coy with us at first, before pointing out that we already have the answers we are seeking because we were there the day he pulled it from the depths. It becomes apparent that if we want to take the book and toss it back, we will need to do so by force, and so we're forced to deliver a swift punch to the man's jaw. Only a broken mirror now stands in the doorway of our old mansion, our own reflection taunting us of how pathetic we are. And yet it still offers us a way to bring Julie back, as the book has always been in our hands. The collector was only ever a figment of our own fractured psyche, appearing to us either through windows or mirrors, and even in the default ending, we are told of the collector's actions, with his sprite once again being the image of him reflected in the window. It's a twist that those with a keen eye may clue into, as in the opening scene of the game, where the fisherman is traveling to Greater Marrow, the Scarlet Book can be seen sitting nearby. It reframes everything that we have known up until this point, with our character no longer being the innocent man dragged into searching for relics of better times for a shady individual, and instead as a man consumed with a desire to bring his wife back from the dead, and unable to reconcile with his own actions, created a split personality. When we talk with the people of the Marrows about the previous fisherman, we are told he was a rather unproductive fellow, sleeping all day and sailing at night. When he would return, he would bring back hardly any fish until he left the Marrows one day and simply vanished. That is, until we found the job listing for a new fisherman and returned home with the book in order to gather what we needed to bring Julie back to us. Now we are given two choices for how we wish to proceed. If we choose to go forward with the collector's plan at this point, it will be made explicitly clear that we are the one that is performing the ritual rather than the collector. If instead we head back to the lighthouse keeper, telling her we retrieved the book, she will comment that it was within our hold this entire time, but she is thankful for our brief window of lucidity. We are now ready to cast the book back into the waters, and once the night is at its darkest, the lighthouse keeper shines her light on where we will need to go. We sail out into the darkness, finding where it is we will need to throw it back, and as we hold the crimson book in our hands, it resists us. It tosses itself from side to side, silver ribbons feebly clinging to us as we hold it above our head and toss it over the deck, watching as it sinks beneath the tides. It is a story that has been told many times before, and it is one without a happy ending. By throwing the book back and letting go of our grief, we offer ourselves to the depths. We are a danger to these waters, and the Leviathan, its faithful protector, will see to it that we never harm them again. Without us, the Marrows are safe from forces beyond our comprehension, kept safe by the light of the tower, keeping a silent vigil over the town. It is not a happy ending, but it is one that feels bittersweet. In fact, it is bittersweet regardless of which ending we choose, as there are consequences to our actions no matter what we do. Either we are devoured by the Leviathan that stalks these waters, or we bring death and madness upon all who live. The only constant is that we get our wish in the end. Whether it is through madness or through death, we will be reunited with our darling Julie forevermore. I just want to thank you all so much for watching through to the end and all of the support you have shown me. All of the love you have shown to the Dark Souls 2 video, as well as to the shorts of each boss in that game, have meant a lot to me. And so I would like to remind people that if I can get to 600 subscribers, I will begin working on my next massive video with my favorite game from Software, Bloodborne. That being said, I would like to pivot somewhat with my channel. I still enjoy making the shorts, and I have been enjoying the release schedule of every other day rather than daily, as it allowed me to have the time to work on this video and more videos to come. I want to try making more of these smaller videos covering a number of different indie games. I already have the next title picked out, which I aim to have out by the end of the year, as well as other plans to cover a story in the written medium as a sort of special video for Halloween. Of course, these plans may change if life gets in the way, but I had a blast making this video, and I am looking forward to working on much more like it. I also want to give a special thank you to my friends and my fiancé who helped add an extra level of immersion by lending me their voices. I may invite them and other guests to come and voice a few roles for future videos, which should help break up listening to me drone on for an hour or two. I'm looking forward to putting out more videos and more shorts covering Pokemon, the end of StarCraft 2, and potentially a return to the Diablo series by covering the 4th game. Until next time, this has been Lore Master Zarek, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.